Hello, everyone, and welcome into the crowded booth. We're back here alongside good friend of the show and constantly staying busy. Now with some basketball, we're going to talk hoops here a little bit later on. It's Palmer Thombs of Dogs HQ on the On3 Network. Palmer, appreciate you taking the time in what has been probably has this been the busiest January like you've ever been a part of? I know you've been a part of some national championships, but just talking about roster, coaching, portal, recruiting, all this stuff, does it just keep getting crazier to you?
I mean, it's so hard to compare one year to the other. It felt like it happened quicker. The last 2 years after that, especially last year. I mean, obviously because of the windows and all that.
Hmm.
Um, that year it felt like, and the deadline to transfer within the conference last year, it felt like it was just go 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 go. Maybe some of that was the jet lag coming back from LA. But this year it feels like it's been more constant. And I think some of that has to do with the fact that Georgia didn't make the college football playoff, and so these decisions were coming down as soon as things started. And
Yeah.
then you obviously, and we all expected draft decisions to come out, opt outs and things of that nature, and didn't really get anything. And but you had to be on alert. And so I was joking with somebody here recently when I went to a Christmas party. I had to borrow somebody else's watch just because I couldn't bear going to being on a night off with my Apple Watch constantly buzzing as all the alerts of all these various different people that we were just talking about that we've got on notifications.
Yeah.
Pete Nakos, Matt Zenitz, all these different people. ESPN. I mean, you got to have Tham on and Chris Hummer and just all these different, Hayes Fawcett. You got to have all these people on alert. And so the wrist was getting a constant buzz, and sometimes I'm not wearing the watch and I still feel the buzz.
Yeah, it's man, that was a good little line right there, Palmer. Look at you. You're getting used to it. No, look, I obviously for folks that don't know, I cover LSU. We had from they played the bowl game on Monday, okay, New Year's Day, and then Wednesday, Key or not Key, wrong team. Kelly fires the entire defensive coaching staff. We enter into a search where 2 days later they name the defensive coordinator. Then they named the D line coach. I mean, we went. It was just within the span of like 8 or 9 days, like the content we had. Oh, and we also forget they got a 4-star running back at the top quarterback and ranked in the 2025 class. So it's been fun. Been fun. Great time of the year, though. I'm glad you could join us, Palmer. Obviously, the big news surrounding Georgia. Everyone wants to know, where does Georgia sit in this new SEC under Nick Saban? But look, we all kind of have a pretty good idea of where that is. But some of the biggest news is the man they call T Rob makes his way to Athens. Palmer, this was something that initially came out, and then I know you guys reported and had some great content over there at Dogs HQ about Alabama and Kalen DeBoer were trying to bring him back. There supposedly was an interview. There might have been an interview process, but it kind of ends up where Robinson is going to stay on staff at Georgia. Will Muschamp's going to take maybe a back seat to enjoy life, enjoy his son's potential career at Vanderbilt. Your thoughts on this move as a whole? How does it impact Georgia? And just kind of the fiasco of where it felt like he's here, he might not be here. No, he's definitely here.
Yeah, I mean, that was another one of those things that just popped up out of nowhere. Thank goodness I've got Georgia football on tweet notifications, because I'm walking into the basketball game on Saturday, and all of a sudden I get a notification and they've put out the graphic that they've hired a secondary coach, and T Rob is coming on, and it's like, well, what? They don't have an opening. Like, what's going on? And I think the writing was on the wall there that was going to be Will Muschamp moving into a different role. And rightfully so. He's earned that kind of an opportunity to be able to be around his alma mater, be around one of his best friends in Kirby Smart, and add in Mike Bobo there. Those three are very tight. To be able to be back in Athens, to be around his son Jackson, that was a walk-on quarterback, and maybe had the biggest play of that Orange Bowl, the highlight of that Orange Bowl game. Getting Will to jump around and celebrate there on that sideline. That was fun to see. I think that became clear. And so that happened Saturday morning. Georgia's going into a big recruiting weekend. And then we get the official statement that's saying, hey, Georgia has hired, T-Rob, and that he's going to be taking over as a co-defensive coordinator and safeties coach. Will Muschamp is going to be moving into a defensive analyst position to spend some more time with his family. And, to be able to keep a guy like that on your staff, around the building. But then to be able to add a guy like T-Rob is such a huge win for Georgia. And, every time I've talked about this, I've said it's just as much of a win because of what they're getting as it is what they're keeping away from Tuscaloosa, what they're stealing from Tuscaloosa and keeping away from Kalen DeBoer and that new Alabama staff. And obviously the interview process, did it happen? Did it not? Reports indicate that Sunday night, after the Saturday announcement, Sunday night, T-Rob is in Tuscaloosa, still in Tuscaloosa at that time. And, interviewing for a position on that new Alabama staff. Ultimately, they go a different direction with their defensive coordinator spot. And, one that I don't know was, what folks expected. I think that a lot of people had DJ Durkin circled. A lot of people had, T-Rob circled as a potential candidate. Maybe those guys were going to be co-coordinators, given the fact that they've spent a little bit of time together. And then, they end up going with the South Alabama head coach, which all things point, all the reports that I've seen is a big hire for them.
Yeah.
But, from a Georgia side of things, I think that it's big that it was not T-Rob after, the excitement of getting him in Athens. And, now as you look at Georgia's defensive, staff, let's just throw staff out there because you have to include Will Muschamp. He's not going to be on the field, but he is going to be around the building and be a part of, when a kid arrives in Athens, here's who he can talk to. He can talk to Will Muschamp. He can talk to T-Rob. He can talk to Dante Williams. He can talk to Glenn Schumann. Oh, by the way, you can talk to Kirby Smart. A lot of guys that, have a great track record, in coaching and recruiting, some good players there, some guys that have been around Georgia for a while. I think that in adding T-Rob, not only are they getting a great recruiter, but they're getting somebody that is very, very familiar with the Saban smart throw in Muschamp, style defense. And so, while you're losing Will Muschamp from on the field and everything that he brings to the table there, you're gaining somebody that is just as much qualified to be there. So, that is super exciting news for Georgia, a huge win. And it'll be interesting to see how they can kind of parlay that with the recruiting, with the transfer portal, maybe. Obviously there's a name there that is, very familiar to Georgia fans and has been thrown around as a, potential for if that were to happen. Won't dive in too much there because he is not in the portal. But I think that we all know who we're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's a crazy day and age. And you mentioned obviously the hire that Alabama made, Kane Womack from South Alabama, his ties obviously with Kalen DeBoer, their time at Indiana together. So that's something that's, Alabama's going to roll with. And look, we were talking about this. We had a live show last week when the Saban, news came out, and we talked, Palmer, about tiers. Now, obviously, Georgia is going to stay, feels like in that top tier no matter what. I personally felt, and I think you and I were talking about this through text maybe a couple days ago or something around that before the Saban news, you can make a real good case that your top tier SEC programs entering 2024, Georgia, Alabama, and Texas.
Mm-hmm.
All these programs have recently been to a playoff, Texas being the most recent, and Alabama too, Georgia winning the previous two national championships. That financially, NIL-wise, they all feel like they're in a good position to compete at the top of the college football world. But as Georgia kind of gets, ready for a Sabanless SEC, I think a lot of people just say, okay, well, it's Georgia's time now. wanted to get your thoughts is because the SEC is about to get harder. It's going to be way harder to do kind of what Alabama did over the past decade. Is the expectation that Georgia should just, move up into that spot? Is that maybe a little bit taking for granted kind of what's happening around the landscape of college football? Or your just thoughts on this, kind of their spot as they get ready to embark in a lot of new changes, new SEC, no Nick Saban, and a 12-team playoff?
Yeah, I mean, I think that as like we said, that top tier still was with Nick Saban, will be without Nick Saban, still is without Nick Saban, Georgia, Alabama, and Texas. And I think that tier 2 is incredibly good, incredibly strong. LSU, Ole Miss, Oklahoma, Tennessee, Florida, Auburn, Texas A&M. I mean, it is a deep, that tier 2 and the depth of the league in that second tier is what makes the SEC so special. You've got teams that are not in that second tier that are competing like a second tier, even a top tier team at times, Kentucky, Missouri, teams like that, that have popped. So that being said, I think that, what we talked about over text and what I think that we're both, alluding at here is that it is going to be really difficult to win in the SEC with all those teams, with how much all these teams are going to be playing each other now. Keep in mind, Georgia in that 2024 schedule is going to be playing at Texas, at Alabama, at Ole Miss. They've got dates with Florida and Auburn, Kentucky, Tennessee. I mean, that's 7 games right there. 7 of your 8. Throw in Mississippi State just to round out the SEC schedule, and so that I'm not knocking the Bulldogs there. But it is an incredibly tough environment this league is, and for Georgia has had the benefit of playing in what has been a weaker SEC East than the West. And at times significantly weaker than the West. I think there's certainly seasons where you could make the case that the East has been, just as strong, if not stronger, but traditionally the West has been stronger. And so, getting rid of the divisions, you're going to see teams playing each other more often. And so Georgia will have to play Alabama, in the regular season every, what is it going to be? 2 years, 4 years?
Just 2 years, I believe.
Every 2 years. I mean, so, you're going to be seeing these matchups, and that just makes it so much harder to do what Alabama and Nick Saban did, to dominate the league where, in a season, everyone was looking at, and, we talk about, Vegas and win totals, and people are like, oh, well, if, Kalen DeBoer is, winning 9 games, people are going to be calling for his head. Guys, winning 10 games in this new look SEC is going to be an incredible feat because you're going to be beating a lot of really good teams. I would be shocked if any team goes 12-0 next year in the SEC.
Yeah.
And probably going to be the same case in all these other leagues too. I mean, you look at Michigan, who's, obviously coming off of a national championship, and they've got to play Washington, Oregon, USC, and Ohio State, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
I think that they've got all those teams, not to mention they've got an out-of-conference game with Texas. So if you throw the non-conference games in there, Georgia plays Clemson, Alabama plays Wisconsin, USC and LSU play each other, Texas and Texas and Michigan play each other. It is really, really hard. I mean, it's exciting for the, generic, average college football fan that's going to be tuning in on a Saturday to see some really great matchups. But, for teams and folks that have expectations, you need to change them a little bit. I think that's ultimately what it's going to come down to. So where does Georgia stack up in a Sabanless SEC? They're still going to be at the top, just like they would have been with Saban there, in the old SEC and the new SEC. Saban, no Saban, Georgia is going to be at the top because of the way that Kirby Smart recruits, the way that Kirby Smart coaches, and the way that this program is rolling, the talent that has been accumulated, to position them to be in a great spot going into that new look college world of college football. But I mean, I would be shocked, absolutely floored, if Georgia is able to go 3-0. I mean, just circle those three games: the at Ole Miss, at Alabama, at Texas. If they go 3-0 in that is
You're talking about one of the greatest teams we've ever seen.
that is something special, because those are three teams that are top 10 programs heading into next year. Top 10 teams heading into next year, with the way that Texas and Alabama both coming off of college football playoff appearances. And obviously there's change. But both those teams are incredibly talented. And then Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin, and the way that they've been able to rebuild on top of, on the heels of a really strong season in 2023. So, you add in Clemson, Tennessee. I mean, there's 4, maybe 5 top 10, top 15, top 20 type opponents on this Georgia schedule. It's really tough. And so, where does Georgia stand? Like I said, I think that they're going to be at the top, but does that mean that they're going 12-0, going undefeated? And, that should be the expectation. I think that that's probably a little bit unrealistic in the new world of college football.
Yeah, I think we need a little bit of a recalibration on expectations.
That's a great way of putting it.
As we get to this new SEC. I mean, I was telling folks the other day, and I texted you this, can't wait to see the first 9-win 3-loss national champion, because you very well could have a 3-loss Ole Miss, a 3-loss Texas, a 3-loss Georgia that makes it into the college football playoff and ends up winning the whole thing as, the 11th or 12th seed there. And, it'd be crazy, just crazy to kind of think about what we're getting into in college football. You already kind of touched on the transfer portal really quickly. Wanted to get your thoughts on, is Georgia done here? I mean, look, you added some pieces, obviously, as the trickle down effect begins, and it started with Alabama, then it went to Washington, then to Arizona, now San Jose State. I don't know how much Georgia's looking at San Jose State.
Does it end up at Michigan?
Yeah, does it end up at Michigan? I mean, that's a whole nother trickle down effect. Is Georgia done here? Like, how do you feel about the current haul they have, just kind of talking about those guys together, and do they need to add anything else?
Yeah. And I'm doing a portal profile series over at Dogs HQ, taking a look at the 6 guys that they've got coming on board right now. And, it's 3 wide receivers, 1 running back, and then 2 guys on the defensive side of the ball. So if you wanted to go 3-2-1, 3 wide receivers, 2 defensive players, 1 running back. A defensive lineman and a defensive back there. I don't think Georgia is done. Now, that being said, Georgia is over the 85 count right now. And we all know that the 85 probably doesn't mean what, we all think it means.
Yeah.
Is the 85 a, hard rule? I don't think so. I mean, there's been years where I've put together a scholarship distribution and Georgia's been over that 85. There's been years where they're under the 85. And, you put a lot of time and effort into trying to figure out, how a team is going to get to that number. And you never know. So that being said, Georgia's at 89 right now. If they're going to, add, I would imagine that they have to subtract some. They may have to subtract some just to field a team, to be able to go out and play, under the NCAA rules. And so, I don't know that Georgia is done. I don't think that they are done. They may be done for this window. But I mean, look at, they had a Stanford tight end over the weekend, and he's, taken a visit to Georgia and to Texas. That's somebody that is absolutely is a take for Georgia. They added 1 player on the defensive line, but I feel like they maybe need a little bit more there. Georgia is not, I don't think Georgia is done. They like I said, I think that they're probably done for this window, and that's because of the schedule. I mean, the academic calendar, the hurdles that have to, would have to be jumped through, to get a kid in school at this point, past the ad drop period, past the start of classes, and all that. So that being said, I think that the 6 that we have, seen so far for Georgia, that's the 6 that are going to be on campus and going through spring ball. But that doesn't mean that they're done entirely. So again, Georgia's, there is another 15-day window in the spring. It's shorter than the one that we all, just went through in December. But May 1st to May 15th, Georgia could be, losing a couple of players and potentially gaining a couple too.
I think it's hilarious. I was talking with someone, and it's going to be hilarious to see, and I'm going to feel for the staff that has to deal with this. But this trickle down effect, like some unfortunate program at the FCS level, probably is going to have their transfer portal window, 30-day window open during spring practice,
Yeah.
and that would be an absolute nightmare. Potentially, you could be looking at of what would happen across college football.
Yeah,
But,
because you keep
crazy.
seeing these 30-day windows open, and as San Jose State, I mean, like you said, there has been a trickle down. Alabama had theirs open because of a coaching change late, and then that queued it at Washington, then at Arizona, now at San Jose State. San Jose State's got to fill that spot, and like you said, they could go a whole bunch of different directions, and so any sort of change opens the portal. It just feels a little silly to me to have these dates and these windows, and then all of a sudden we're well past the windows being open, and we're still talking about kids entering the portal, and obviously kids that have announced plans to enter the portal because they plan on graduating here at some point over the next couple of months.
Yep.
It's never ending, and I laugh because I'm looking at social media, and I keep seeing so and so has entered the portal, and I'm like, what? That school is well past the 15 days. The window is not open. Like, how are we doing this? So
Yeah.
that's the world that we live in with the portal right now, it feels like.
Yeah, Auburn had 2 kids entered today. And
Exactly.
like,
That's
what are we doing here? Yeah, it's crazy. Well, look, football's great. But man, it's hoop season inside the Stegman Coliseum. Heard the Steg was rocking last Saturday night.
it
Or
was.
Saturday, I guess 12 o'clock that game was local time. Against number 5 Tennessee, held a big lead, showed a lot of fight. Mike White, look, everyone, if you're a basketball fan, maybe a Georgia basketball fan or Georgia fan that watches basketball, that might be more like it, honestly. If you're one of those, you kind of have seen the comparisons that every single broadcast of Georgia basketball has talked about, and it's essentially Mike White's second year. What happens in year number 2. Look, I don't know what Georgia's going to end the season at. I don't know if it's an NIT bid. I don't know what it's going to be. But you have to love the confidence that this group has. Palmer, so I have to ask a question. Is UGA Hoops back under Mike White, or are they at least relevant now across the national stage? Because, man, it looks like a fun product to watch on the court.
They're definitely relevant. Back to where? Where were they?
I would say the last time they were seriously relevant from a national standpoint might have been when they had Anthony Edwards. I don't know if that might be pushing it.
And that team went 16-16, and it took they went into the SEC tournament at below 500. So
hey, they won the only game that year in the SEC tournament.
They and God, I can't remember who the other team would have been that won the Wednesday night game, but co-SEC champs.
There you go.
Yeah. So no, I mean, I do think that this Georgia team is on the radar nationally. And that it is a, serious situation with it. It's something worth watching is, Georgia is very relevant at this point, going to South Carolina tonight as we're recording this, a tough road test for them against a team that's currently projected to be in the NCAA tournament. Now, why is South Carolina projected to be in the tournament? I don't really get that. They don't have a better resume than Georgia, and I don't think Georgia should be projected to be in the NCAA tournament. But all things aside, we're 3 games into SEC play, and Georgia is above 500. They're 2-1. They have a road win at at Missouri to open things up. They beat a talented Arkansas team, an Arkansas team that's not necessarily playing its best basketball right now, but an Arkansas team that is way more talented than Georgia. That was projected, I want to say third in the SEC coming into the year. So, Arkansas and the, tradition that Eric Musselman has been able to build there, certainly, the success, sustained success, that's a big win. And then to turn around and have a game like Saturday, obviously not winning that was disappointing for Georgia. And you could tell with Mike White post game, he said, look, we're not going to take this as a moral victory. We're here to win these games. We're not here to compete in these games. But that being said, you could also tell that he was proud of the way that this team has improved, proud of the way that this program has improved, and proud of the way that, the product that's out there right now, and that is enjoyable to watch, and B, getting better. Obviously with a talented recruit that's coming in Asa Newell, you've got something to be excited about for the future. But I think that with this team, you've got something to be excited about. Again, 3 games into SEC play, they're 2-1. I probably would have projected them to be 0-3 at this point. And we're talking about a really strong SEC, and the fact that 8 wins gets you playing postseason basketball in my mind. 9 wins probably gets you into the NCAA tournament. There were a couple of exceptions, and obviously there always will be. But I mean, with Georgia's non-conference slate and the way that they went out and tested themselves, I don't think that Georgia would end up being one of those exceptions. To beat a Wake Forest team that's fringe, is receiving votes, for the top 25, to beat a Florida State team that is, and do that one on the road, to get a win over a Georgia Tech team that has a win over Duke. I mean, and competed with Duke again. Look, Georgia's only losses in the non-conference portion came to 3 power conference teams: Oregon, Providence, Miami. Those teams are good. Those teams are really good. And none of them came at home. They all came at neutral sites. So Georgia's not going to get knocked for that. They might, in fact, get a boost for playing those games and in the strength of schedule category. And, then the SEC is going to have its strength of schedule. And Georgia's got some opportunities here. Like I said, I think they need to probably get to 8, maybe 9 wins. Maybe in that scenario, you're looking at Nashville and the SEC tournament and saying, can they win 1? Can they win 2? At that point, does that get them in? Does that secure them a spot? Or are you watching the bubble, on Selection Sunday? I think that Georgia has a shot to be on the bubble or feel safely secure in an NIT spot. I think that there's a really strong chance that Georgia basketball is playing in the postseason for the first time since 2017 this year, and that is something that should be celebrated. So is UGA Hoops back under Mike White? They might be back in the postseason.
And that would be a big accomplishment coming from where they did just in Tom Crean's last season. Palmer, we appreciate you as always, my friend. You can check out his work over at Dogs HQ. They do a great job over there, and just covering all things Georgia Bulldogs, whether it is basketball, whether it is football, recruiting. And Palmer, I don't know if it's so big on you, really too big on y'all's site, but man, baseball season, baseball season, about get ready to ramp up here. I know down here in Baton Rouge, people are excited. Yes.
There's some excitement about baseball on our board. So, like you said, come over to Dogs HQ, check us out. Really, really fun group, really fun staff. We like to engage on the message boards, and, we're here for you, trying to keep you up to date with all the latest recruiting, football, basketball, baseball, team, whole lot of things going on. There's always something going on if you can't tell. And, I like to think that we've got, as good of a group as there is out there to keep you up to date with it.
They do a great job. We appreciate Palmer taking time on our show. We appreciate you listening, whether it's on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you may be listening. Or also, if you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and we'll catch you next time here on the Crowded Booth.
Pile in here and make yourself feel at home. The Crowded Booth is coming on. The Crowded Booth with Bryce Koon.